Comprehensive Study of Mass Murder Precipitants and Motivations of Offenders, written by Melanie A. Taylor, presentation by Anna Patterson, Emily Hattan, and Ryan Wilson. Throughout this article, Melanie A. Taylor seeks to create a full analysis on mass murders throughout the United States. The author examines a large data sample of 152 mass murders through the FBI Supplementary Homicide Reports in USA Today from 2007 to 2011, as a large contrast to previous data that used small sample sizes and focused on particular characteristics. The study shows that mass murders typically follow a triggering event, are committed by non-strangers, and are rarely committed by people with mental illnesses. This study contradicts what is popularly heard in the media today, which is a portrayal of a sick, young, white man committing these crimes. Previous research into the subject has proved to focus on the same victim and offender characteristics, which has concluded in very limited results. The author also strives for a data set that does not have restrictions or exclusions, such as certain types of weapons, offenders, offense precipitants, and location restrictions. With an all-inclusive data set, the study focuses on motivations of these crimes, while striving to get the truth behind mass murder precipitants and whether the typical portrayal of offenders proves to be accurate when taking on such a large data set without restrictions. First, the study examines how the offender and case characteristics rely heavily on the precipitant of the offense. The author then analyzes which motivations and precipitating factors conclude in the most serious crimes. Lastly, the author examines the results and how they relate to popular media portrayals of these crimes. This article includes two main focus points and hypotheses. One is that offenders vary in their background offending patterns based on their motivation for offending. The second being that offenders with mental health issues will kill significantly more victims than those killing over relationships or other issues.
Prior to this study, many other studies were conducted. However, most of the research was biased. Researchers only chose cases that were convenient to them and only focused on a few murders, and information got left out of the studies. Most of the research came from news stories and only focused on certain victim and offender types. The studies also differ because the definition of mass murder is not clear.
Data for this study was collected from 2007 to 2011 in order to identify mass murder offenses, which included 152 documented by the FBI Supplementary Homicide Reports in USA Today. Then each event was matched up with media reports. Of the 152 mass murders documented, there were 102 cases that were identified by the FBI's Uniform Crime Report and 50 cases identified by USA Today. The descriptive statistics included average number of offenders, victims, victim deaths, victim and offender relationships, weapons used, prior offending history, suicide, offender and offense motivations, and demographics. The mass murders that happened from 2007 to 2011 were overwhelmingly committed by men. 87.5% of the mass murders were committed by one person. The average age was 33, and the offender did not have a criminal history. The motivations of mass murders included the same categories as descriptive statistics. The greatest number of differences was reported between offenders who were motivated by crimes and offenders who committed their offenses for non-criminal reasons. 3 of the most deadly mass shootings in U.S. history occurred during the time periods of the study. They were the Virginia Tech shooting, Fort Hood military base, and an immigrant center in New York. In many cases, some offenders had multiple reasons for committing offenses, and the reason why the chart does not equal 100%. In this study, the 5 motivations measured were emotional triggers, relationship issues, mental health issues, criminal motivations, and financial reasons. As shown in the chart, 51% of murders were committed after a specific event triggered the offense. Some examples of evidence triggered the offense were a loss of relationship, of divorce, losing a job, or being involved in a fight. In many cases, it was noted that the offender had a long history of issues, and then a trigger eventually led to the mass murder. One extreme case of emotionally triggered event was in 2010 in Kentucky. A man murdered 2 family members and 3 neighbors just because he got mad at his wife for not making breakfast right. In the Carthage nursing home shooting in 2009, a man who had relationship issues planned to kill his wife who worked in the nursing home, but when he could not find her, he killed others in the nursing home instead. Media reports determined that 30% of offenders had mental health issues. The analysis reported that 23% of offenders were criminally motivated, and 22% of offenders had financial issues. There were no significant differences observed in the number of victims killed, the demographics, or motivations of the killings among male and female mass murderers. White and non-white mass murderers also had few differences. Offenders compiled into the other category had the highest number of victims. Events that had a triggering effect were proven to be the majority of mass murders. For many people, the triggers were the final straw to commit the mass murder. It was shown that although some offenders were dealing with relationship, financial, and mental health issues, there was a particular traumatic event that happened which caused the crime. The only motivation difference in genders revealed where females were more likely to commit the mass murder due to financial issues. Criminally motivated mass murderers were more likely to kill strangers, whereas those who had relationship issues were more likely to hurt family members. In summary, the findings determined that mass murderers are more similar than different from one and another in offense.
The data from this study came from media reports, which is an easy way to obtain information. However, the media reports did not include police, court, or mental health records, which leaves out some important information. Typically in the media, more popular or well-known murders are covered more in depth than murders that are lesser known, and some information could be left out that way, or background information may be inaccurate. There was also little information on weapons used and how that weapon was obtained and the exact location where the murder took place. All of the inaccurate or left out information could have led to different results for this study.
In conclusion, the hypothesis was supported in the sense that the offenses had very different patterns based on why the crime was committed. Crime-motivated offenders were more likely to kill strangers, but those whose crimes were based on a relationship were more likely to harm family members. The study also showed that only 30% of offenders have a mental illness, but their events of mass murder account for significantly more deaths and injuries compared to those without a confirmed mental illness. Overall, both hypotheses were supported.